And this is Mike Valentyne here with Inside the Squared Circle, and we're having a very special interview segment right now. Joining me today, none other than Serena Deeb. Serena, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thank you so much for having me.
Well,
I'm really excited.
Thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
Just, general questions here for you, for all of our audience here for Inside the Squared Circle. Can you discuss when your passion for professional wrestling first began?
Absolutely. One of my favorite topics, actually, because it always, brings back that feeling that I had when I was a kid. I started watching wrestling when I was 11 years old. I was like a huge tomboy, always hung out with, all the guys, and they were all into wrestling, and it just kind of went on for so long, hearing them talk about it all the time, and piqued my interest. So I watched it, and I was hooked from the first time I watched it. Like a lot of other wrestlers say,
Mm-hmm.
like the very first show I watched, I was just infatuated with it.
Was there anyone that you were drawn to, any of the wrestlers that just really caught your attention?
Sure. Well, I was a really big fan of China
Mm-hmm.
when I was a young girl, and like Triple H, Shawn Michaels, that whole crew that was, so big at the time. They were very influential
Mm-hmm.
on my attraction to wrestling.
So when did you make the decision that this is something that I can do and something that you would want to pursue?
Well, I started really seriously thinking about pursuing it around the age of 16, right, before my junior year of high school. I had always, dreamed about it, and it was that quote-unquote childhood dream for me, but it was kind of around the time that a lot of my friends and my peers were applying for college that I started to think, okay, how can I make this happen? What's a realistic way that I can go to wrestling school as well as college? Because my parents were very insistent on that, So I started to really think about it in terms of, where should I apply for college? Where are the wrestling schools? Where do I want to go? And that's when I started really seriously thinking about Ohio Valley Wrestling. The track record was just, unbeatable. And I kind of narrowed it down to which schools to apply to based on, the location of the school. And I just went from there and just tried to take all the necessary steps to ensure that I was able to do that, able to follow that path.
Mm-hmm. All right, so once you joined the school and you started getting trained and eventually you're cleared to start wrestling, what was it like being on the independent scene, just
Sure.
traveling around?
The independent scene it's awesome. I mean, you learn a lot of life lessons on the independents, whether the hard way or just through experience. What I've always loved is just the chance to work with so many different people. And when you travel with the independent circuit, you can go from different promotion to different promotion, state to state, country to country, whatever. And you're always challenged to work with someone else or someone new. People with more experience, people with less experience, people with no experience. And each one is a challenge in its own way. So for me, I just really, especially towards the beginning of my career, I just tried to really soak up as much knowledge as I could from every experience that I had, and just use that, build it in my arsenal of getting better. So, I don't think, there's wrestling, you can go to a wrestling school and practice all you want, but you have to ultimately perform in front of a crowd to really learn, through experience. Learning through experiences, there's nothing, you can't really compare that to anything.
Yeah, definitely.
How
long were you on the independents?
Before my career with WWE, I was on the independents for about 4.5 years, almost 5. And then I had about 1.5 years with WWE, in which I could not work independents, obviously. And then, since that, it's been about 1.5 years since.
Mm-hmm. So you were picked up by WWE's developmental program. What were the differences between developmental and the independent scenes? Like the transition is just beginning.
I think I actually adjusted really well when I was first placed in Tampa at Florida Championship Wrestling. The main advantage that I had was that I had trained at OVW for so long, and that was actually, the original developmental territory. So the way that territory was run in terms of the practice schedule, the show schedule, the TV, and everything, I had been very experienced in the way that the OVW system was run. So when I got to FCW, it was an easy adjustment. It was just pretty much continuing what I had known for 4.5 years already. So that's why I really consider OVW, I'm so thankful that I went there. I consider it a really special place because had it not been for that transition might have been a lot harder for me.
Mm-hmm. So eventually you're in FCW for a little bit and they decide to call you up. And I'll be honest, you probably had one of the most memorable first appearances on WWE television when they brought you in and they shaved your head and you winded up joining the Straight Edge Society. Can you describe what it was like being in such a major angle first coming in and what it was like doing the WWE schedule?
Yeah. It was really cool to be involved in that angle. It was probably the best thing going, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion, for a while. And my debut, I felt, was just very powerful because people had not seen that very often, a woman shaving her head, and when you did, it was a huge deal, and it was always for something really special, like a lose your hair match at WrestleMania or something like that. I mean, it wasn't just something that you saw every day, and to see a woman bald is pretty shocking anyways. So to have that done, I mean, I remember that night, I remember every single detail of that night because it was so special to me. As far as the Straight Edge Society, it was a blast. I learned a lot. Working with the guys is really different, working with a stable where you all kind of had to complement each other, which I felt that we really did. And the schedule itself is really difficult. A lot of people, are aware of this, but the fact that in pro wrestling there's no off season, there's no downtime. Sometimes you fly out on Christmas Day, and that's just the way it is. Some of the tours were really grueling. They would be 2 or 3 weeks long. I think the longest one I did was 2 weeks. And, it's just by the end of those 2 weeks you're so exhausted. The travel, plus going city to city, show to show it's hard to breathe sometimes. But it's also awesome. If you love to travel like I do, it's amazing because you're just traveling the world and getting to see all these different places. And it's if you can take just a little bit of time in each place and try to see something or do something cool, it's awesome,
Mm-hmm.
So it was really cool.
What were some of your more memorable moments with the WWE? I know you had the Straight Edge Society showed up at WrestleMania at some point. Was there anything else big that really stuck out for you?
I'd say definitely the beginning of the first month, just everything happened so quickly. It was okay, I got the call, you're coming to SmackDown. All right, you're shaving your head on TV tonight. All right, you're on the road full time now. And it all happened like that. Everything took off. I believe it was my second or third week on SmackDown that I was in the ring with Triple H and Shawn Michaels. And it was surreal because those were the guys that I idolized and watched every week and was a huge fan of. So it was one of those moments that was just unbelievable. That was definitely really memorable for me. WrestleMania, of course, was awesome. It was just, the crowd was 72,000 people that night, and it was the feeling of that is just you can't compare anything to that feeling. It's unbelievable. I think one of the most fun experiences I had was actually in Mexico, and we were in that feud with Rey Mysterio for quite some time, and it was pretty intense. And Rey is a huge hero in Mexico. He's he's the man. He's the biggest name to ever come out of Mexican wrestling. Mm-hmm. And so we were working with Rey in Mexico City, and I actually not everybody knows this, but I actually have a bachelor's degree in Spanish, so I speak pretty good Spanish. So we went out first, the Straight Edge Society, and Punk did a promo, and every line that he said, I would translate it in Spanish. So he would speak, and the crowd would somewhat react, and then I would translate it, and they went crazy, and they just were loving the fact that, they were booing us, but they were like having a blast with it and loving the fact that I was just translating everything in Spanish. And then Rey came out and got this huge ovation, and it was awesome because it was like, I was getting to actually kind of step out of my shell a little bit and interact with that crowd, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah, that's actually amazing. It's just hearing about that, because you never actually see anything like that, like on TV or whatever. So that's very interesting. Speaking of CM Punk, what was it like working with him? And is he any different from his on-air persona and his real-life personality?
CM Punk's, one of the most talented individuals that I've ever interacted with. I was really lucky to work alongside him for, 9 months or whatever it was, and I think that Luke Gallows and myself both learned a lot from him. He's like a go-getter, to the fullest. Punk has always been the type to believe in himself, and if he wants something, he's going to get it. A lot of people never believed in Punk when he was like on the independent circuit, and always told him that he wasn't WWE material or whatever, and he just has continued to prove everybody wrong. He's one of those guys that has quote unquote silenced the critics, no one can really say anything about him because he believed in himself, and his confidence has shown through since day one in his work. So I learned a lot from him. I think he's got his own character, his own persona completely, and it's different than anybody, which is what I think makes him so successful.
All right. So after your time with WWE came to a conclusion, you were able to go back to the independent scenes, and you were able to accomplish one of your major wrestling goals by going to Japan. Can you describe what it was like going there and just pretty much everything involved?
Yeah. The first time I went to Japan was almost a year ago, and I knew how big of an opportunity it was that I was getting those 2 shows that I first went over there for. I knew that it was a big opportunity, and if I did well, that it might open up some really major doors for me. So I was so excited. I was embracing it like, as you said, it was a lifelong, career-long dream. It was something that I just always envisioned, once I get to wrestle in Japan, that's the biggest honor to me. That is pretty much, evidence of hard work and, a testament to one's skill level to be able to compete there. It's an amazing environment. And I remember the first time that I stepped off the plane and I was going down the escalator at the Narita Tokyo airport. And I was just like the biggest tourist ever. Like I was taking pictures of everything because I just wanted to remember that, forever. And, I was treated so well over there. From the talent in the promotion Smash that I wrestled for, to the fans, to anybody that I pretty much interacted with while I was there, treated me with such respect. And it's a very respectful culture, and people are very, nice and sweet, and just, I love it. I think Tokyo, I often get asked what is the coolest place that you've ever been through traveling. And I've definitely come to the conclusion that Tokyo would be that place. It's surreal. It feels like a different world.
How many times have you been out to Japan now?
I've been 5 times now.
You were part of the Smash promotion. You had an undefeated streak going there for a while.
Yeah.
So they must have had a lot of faith in you and what was going on. So
yeah.
Congratulations with
Thank
that,
you.
actually. Now, when it comes to women's professional wrestling, be it on a national level or an independent level, what do you think the promoters are looking for, and what do you think like the direction that women's wrestling should be, and do you like pretty much where it's at now?
It's so different everywhere, so it's sort of hard to answer the last part of that question anyways. There's obviously places that I favor, or prefer. As far as my personal opinion, I think that what makes an ideal candidate for a wrestling company for a woman is someone that's the total package, obviously. Someone who can wrestle, someone that looks good, who can entertain people, who can, talk. And if you combine all of those elements, that's the total package. I've always felt like, for instance, Melina, I've always said that I felt like Melina was the total package because she could do all of those things. And there's some women who can do one better than the other. There's some women who are really awesome wrestlers, but they might not, look the part. Or there's some women that look like $1 million, but they might not be able to wrestle that well. And I think that it's like any industry where you kind of need a mix. There's always room for a particular talent or a particular skill. And I think that when you have variety and, this person brings this to the table, this person brings this to the table, it's sort of like I said earlier, like with the stable, we all complemented each other. I think that that's the key to like a successful women's division, is just having that, a really well-rounded group of women who are all complete individuals and can complement each other. And I also think that that really makes for a really good wrestling match, is when there's like 2 different styles. One woman is this style, one woman is this style, but you put them together and they make magic. So, in terms of where women's wrestling is going, I think that it will continue to always be different in each place. A company that I've worked for many years and that I believe in so much is Shimmer, Women Athletes. And I think that promotion will continue to grow because there's a big market for women's wrestling and people that appreciate true hardcore women's wrestling and women that, almost pride themselves on being better than the guys, because I know a lot of us do. So I see that company continuing to increase. And as far as the major promotions go, it's always changing. There's always a different flavor of the month. And it's hard to predict. I guess we'll just have to see where it goes. I think TNA has a really great women's division. So hopefully they have the right people backing it and supporting it, and it will do great things.
When it comes to women's wrestling, who do you feel are the bigger fans, like men or women? Are women more drawn to the actual, wrestling that you do?
From my experience, I'd say men. Like when I work for Shimmer, and then when I also wrestle for a promotion called WSU, Women's Superstars Uncensored, I'd say that the majority of fans are male at those 2 all-women's promotions. And so I think across the board for, a mainly women's wrestling promotion or show or whatever, I think it's going to be predominantly men. However, there are more and more women, being introduced to pro wrestling every day. I mean, the amounts of female fans continue to grow. So I think that we'll continue to see that as well.
Do you feel at some point, if with enough work, that women will be about 50-50 at the fan base for like Shimmer or WSU?
I don't really know about that. To be honest, I think it's always going to be more men because of the, kind of what that product, the product's target is. I mean, yeah, these women can wrestle amazingly, but they're also like, hot, for instance, or they have something that appeals to these men, so which is why the men like to watch it. But I don't know. I think that the men will always outnumber the women from the fan base.
All right. Going back to your career here, recently you just suffered a serious injury. Can you discuss what happened?
About 2 months ago, I was wrestling at Shimmer actually, and I got kicked in the head right here on it's called the frontal lobe of the head, and I got kicked really hard, and I had like a lot of forward momentum taking me into the kick. So I was running really hard at this girl, and I got kicked, and it really kind of like jolted me backwards. And after that, like the whole rest of that day and like week, I felt really loopy and had a really bad headache, but I just kind of, brushed it off because injuries are, often in what we do. So I just kind of tried to ignore it a little bit, and then a couple weeks later, things hadn't really gotten better, and I just had some, complications with my head. So I actually went and, saw a doctor, and I had to get all these tests done. And he basically told me that, because I've had multiple concussions, and with each concussion, you're more susceptible to a future concussion, and the future concussions being potentially much worse than the prior ones. So he advised me to take a step backward from wrestling right now, because as with anything, the head needs some time, in order to heal fully. So that's pretty much what happened. Now I'm just, having to take a little time off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're fully recovered, you're back in the ring, what can we expect from you? Any other major goals, accomplishments, anything that's coming down the line?
I would say specifically I would like to focus on Japan, and that has really been the place where I've felt the most happy and kind of the most proud of myself in accomplishing. And so I want to continue that, and I really, like I said, I'm so, fascinated with the culture there. I want to try to go back to Japan as often as I can, and sort of make that my main focus in the future. Also, I've made this, pretty public knowledge, but my dream match is with Mickie James, and she's a good friend of mine, and she's someone that I've always looked up to since, when I first started in my career. She was someone who I aspired to be like, and I've always had that dream of wrestling her, and it's always just been a little too late. When I got to OVW, she went to WWE. When I got to WWE, she went to TNA. So now it's like, maybe the stars will align, and I'll have that dream match. That's what I'm really hoping for, that, because I think that it could be something really special.
All right. Well, Serena, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Mike.
And thank you, everyone out there as well.
Thank you.